All right, so with our handsome Mr. Z, ready, sir? I want to do a little bit with some loose leash walking. So when it comes to loose leash walking, if you're really struggling, so again, he's been doing quite lovely, but if you're just starting your loose leash walking practice from puppy to adult dog to whatever, I would recommend to start off sometimes with your babe next to you and just feed several reps for being by the side, be it left or right, and you're going to create a lot of great value in being by the handler's leg. So sometimes it's not even going for the real walk, where a lot of times we think the best place to learn something is in the moment we would like them to know how to do it. And that can be very challenging. Oh my gosh, we're so tired. Ready? So I would highly recommend, and whichever side he prefers, if he's more on this side versus the other, whichever one works. So even if your puppy doesn't have a designed or designated spot to be in left or right, I would get in the rhythm of starting on one side, feed that for a few reps, and then if you want them to get comfortable with both sides, practice both. So he's like, hold up, there's a crumb. You gonna clean up for me? It's very helpful. He says, you got it. It's all good. So feeding your babe on the side that you want them on is gonna keep them from blowing past you. So what I mean by that is some students will have their food in the opposite side, and then the whole time the puppy is trying to cut in front of you to get to that hand that has the food. So if we're gonna have him on, let's say, my right side, I'm going to feed from my right hand. He's like chewing and walking, hold up, lady. So my hand is now for this moment a little bit of a visual signal for him to hone in on the hand here. Oh my gosh, it fell out. He says, don't worry, I'll get it. And I want him to think the value is for being by the handler's side. So I know Mr. B has just been starting to work now with that longer training lead. And it was really, really helpful for his loose leash walking where there wasn't constant tension on a 6-foot lead. You guys may find, same thing for Mr. Z. I know sometimes he is practicing off of gear. Off gear practice is very nice whenever possible to do so in a safe situation for him and everybody else. But I would highly recommend to also practice on leash practice too, because for a lot of dogs, if the only time they work certain skills is off of gear, they won't either feel as comfortable when they're on equipment, or they might feel that something on gear is not the same concept as when they're off. For some dogs, being on equipment creates frustration, like barrier frustration or anxiety, thinking they can't get away or they can't get to the thing they want. Yeah, you take a little nap, would you? So if you're finding that your dog is struggling when equipment is on, it could very well be this feeling of feeling trapped or unable to get to what they want, and it's coming out bigger. So we do want to practice a little bit of both worlds. So having your pup on a long lead, having your pup sometimes on a 6-foot leash, and in safe places to practice, like a sniffspot.com that might be fenced in, or your own yard or somewhere that is a safe zone to do so, have a bit of off-leash time or dragging a long line. So I am not saying that if your dog has no recall whatsoever, or that they could be a potential harm to themselves or others, that they should be off-leash. The only time dogs should be off leash is in places that are allowed to do so. There have been many times where I have gone walking and it is a strictly on leash environment and there are dogs that are off gear. So it is not nice for others and it's not nice for your dog. Even if the dog may be immensely friendly, they could ruin someone's hard efforts that they might be working on with a previous, with their own dog versus the other loose dog. So we want to respect each other, make sure we're helping everybody feel safe and feel like they all have the right to a healthy and safe environment. So remember that if it's not legally safe or legally okay to release your dog into the world, I would not be having them off gear. So there are plenty of dogs that shouldn't be off gear because they have no such thing as a recall, or they could be a harm to themselves or others. So I would highly recommend, even if it is a safe place to do so and your babe has no recall, please use a training lead so you can prevent the rehearsal of the behaviors we don't want them to get good at or bombarding others. So right here, maybe what we'll try is a little bit with our stay again, even though he's not on the dog bed. And we'll just see how Mr. Z is feeling with being stationary on the floor versus on a target. Nice. And again, the reason we're sometimes picking stationary positions because a lot of times he is rather pooped out. So even though they don't get to wrestle really the same way they would in the structured play class. I think sometimes coming here and having to work a few skills and taking little breaks and having some play does get them both physically and mentally pooped out. So Mr. Z says, I'd much rather just veg and get fed for being cute. And that sounds like a great plan, and I hope to do the same thing later. So, yes. So, but if Mr. Z is unable to settle like this with his friend, like we mentioned with Mr. C, I would highly recommend he's like, hold up, where'd you go? Is try to work these same skills in environments that have slight variation of difficulty or distraction sake. If we're always practicing like in a vacuum, like I mentioned, like only in class or only here with like the crazy snack lady, then he may not generalize these skills, or typically he won't, to you versus me, to this environment versus home. He says goodbye. So you may have moments where make sure that as you're upping the criteria, you have actually helped your puppy generalize the skills to those new venues. Otherwise, the frustration we might be getting from our puppies being unresponsive or not listening or being opinionated or whatever, all those things also don't help the relationship if you're just putting words in between helping. But it might be one of those situations where maybe the reason he's having such a rough time is because he doesn't quite understand how to rock it in those dynamics. He's like, oh my gosh, keep talking so I can go take a nap. Is that delicious? Here you go. See if you can eat while sleeping. He's doing a really good job. He's like, maybe it's time for grooming. So I'm just going to see, maybe I can do a full little circle around him. He's maybe an owl, and he can just, don't fall over, sir. Nice. So, and I know we brought up a little bit earlier how he still got that limp in the front end. Again, not saying that there's anything wrong with him. He could just be sore. It could have been a growth spurt. He could have tweaked something while he was wrestling or crashing. I know he's a bit of an awkward guy sometimes. But remember too, like if it's, he's an active guy, but he didn't really get the time to rest the limb, it could be continuously aggravating it, and it could build into a bigger behavior down the road for anxiety or arthritis, which could lead to like some pain responses. So I would always, double check. Yeah, he's almost done. Make sure that it's nothing that's getting bigger, So maybe we'll go back. We'll feed him for this beautiful place. Again, just working the stay on this floor. I'm going to say, all done. Oh, thank you. And we'll see if we can get Mr. Handsome up. Oh my gosh, so tired. So after getting him up and wiggling, ready? We might do a little bit with that loose leash walking again. So in the beginning, my hand is the visual for him to hone in on. And then later you could fade this out, but you can see how he's still kind of limping in that front end. Ready? Nice job, sir. So I'm not going to have him do too much wiggling. But I know he and his friends do play nice, so it's not like anybody's being too rowdy. Ready? We'll do another little sit. Yes. Good job. He's so smart. So maybe we'll rock a little bit with some eye contact again. So as opposed to working the two-hand cookie game, as opposed to working some pattern games and name recognition, we could work a little bit with a look or watch me. So we might go, ready? Look. Yes. So in the beginning, your food may create the behavior or the response. Remember, we want to go from, for example, luring into instead reinforcing at the end. So I don't love the wordage, but I know I've mentioned this in class. View it like going from the bribe to now a paycheck instead. So typically the bribe you give first, and then they go do the work. Now we want to go from instead of the bribe first to instead do the work, and then you get the paycheck. Oh my goodness, what a hard day. Mr. Z says he might be all done for the rest of the day. So with Mr. Z, if you're ever trying to work with some of these eye contact exercises, short and sweet for the win, like we mentioned a little earlier, he's literally almost falling asleep while I'm blabbing. I know, I'm so boring. I'm so sorry. So, but I would definitely try and see where are we having success. I know I mentioned a little bit earlier for Miss P, is think about your green, yellow, and red, like your set of lights. Green environments, green setups, green practice in the sense like these are the skills he offers all the time. He's always taking food. They're going beautiful. Yellows, again, where things get a little bit hairy. They're not as responsive. They're still taking food and able to offer behavior, but there's a bounce back, but there's hesitation or there's some confusion or a little bit of unsure or woohoo feelings. And then red is where nothing is going well. Like they're not doing a good job in the sense that they're not feeling comfortable. They're unable to offer behavior. They're not taking food. We're having a hard time. So we want to stay away from red where things are just not going great. And then, because remember, the more our dog is able to do something, the more they're getting good at that practice. So they'll grow into behavior, not grow out of behavior. So for Mr. Z, who's taking a siesta right now, I would always recommend gauge where things are now in green, yellow, and red. And as you're progressing, you may actually see change where things that were in the yellow now progress to green, and things that were maybe in the red start to move to the yellow. So because if our walks or when we practice is always easy peasy green and then super hard red, there's no in between for your dog to actually be able to change or move or create new behavior if it's always very simple and easy to immensely hard. We want to have a more middle so we can start to gain those responses or behaviors. But Mr. Z says, I'm super boring and he would like to take a siesta. And I guess we'll end it with Mr. Z taking some Z's. So we'll let him take a little moment. We'll bring him back to take a nap and we'll rotate to our men. So tired. He's like, but I'm still here waiting.